Alright, here's another informational video and some tips and ideas to help you guys with your AP studying for the essay specifically. We've been doing the AP essay poetry a couple times now. You guys did your first major graded prompt as the midterm, and now we are moving from poetry to prose. So poetry and prose are actually very similar. They're both close readings. They both allow you to cite in-text direct evidence because you have the literature right in front of you. So these two pieces feel very similar. There are some differences that we'll go over a little bit today, but I do have a couple new strategies to help you guys think about the essay as we move forward with second semester. So the first thing I need you to think about is close reading. So when I went to my AP training in Grand Rapids in October, I learned that 80% of this exam is close reading. It's close reading on the multiple choice, and it's close reading with essay 1 and 2. The other 20% is question 3, which is not a close read. It's more of a memorization activity. But what happens is 80% of what you're going to have to do requires a close read. So close reading is a form of critical reading, and it's something that you obviously are doing in my class, but it's something that you'll be doing in all sorts of classes and also in college. However, in our class, the close reads are pretty short. They're about a page. In college, they get a little bit longer. They're like a scholarly article that you closely read, or it might be some type of text that you have to read online for class discussion. But close reading is 3 phases. Phase 1 is basically comprehension, just getting and understanding, and this is where annotation is really important. Phase 2 is then determining how the text is put together. So this is like getting content, this is getting craft, and then phase 3 is like bringing it all together. So for phase 2, you gotta like zoom out a little bit, and you've comprehended the piece, and then you start picking apart diction or the structure, the syntax, point of view. It's all those craft elements. So you're kind of looking at them closely. And then kind of like my cookie analogy, phase 3 is like the final cookie product where you kind of bring it all together. You've looked at the ingredients, you've looked at the process and what the cookie is supposed to be. And then phase 3 is determining what the text means. And then you have to zoom back out. And that's what's really hard for kids, is they can zoom in, they get really focused on that craft analysis stuff, but the problem is they can't step back and then say, okay, they had a lot of diction, but why? Well, the diction was to show the violence of war, or the ability for people to understand the greater theme or purpose of the piece of literature that they give you, or the close reading at hand. So once you start wrapping your head around close read, there are 3 strategies that I want to talk about today. Strategy number 1 is spot of time and human condition. Strategy number 2 is how does the speaker or character or narrator, whoever like the main person is, how does that person or persons feel at the beginning of the close read to the end, and then the cutoff matters. So these first 2 strategies are definitely poetry and prose, because poems are going to talk about the human condition and they're going to highlight a spot of time. And then poems are definitely going to have a different feel at the start of the piece to the end of the piece. The only thing that's really different here is prose has a cutoff. Poems are in their entirety on the exam, but prose is a piece of text that has been taken from a large novel or a large play, and you're just giving a short like snapshot of it, or the close read. So moving into these strategies, a spot of time equals human condition. And what I mean by this is all literature is illustrating the human condition. I've tried many times to think about when it hasn't, but Kite Runner definitely illustrated the human condition. Metamorphosis even illustrates a bit in a weird way, but it is still illustrating the human condition. You're going to see A Doll's House is about the human condition. It's just what lens of the human condition changes. So like Kite Runner, it's about poverty, it's about religion, it's about Middle Eastern culture. And Metamorphosis is more about the human condition of like parent and child, or just individual identity. And then with A Doll's House, I think you see more of the human condition under gender and marriage roles. But you need to ask yourself, whatever you're reading, the close read is giving you a spot of time on the human condition. You need to figure out what human condition it's asking you to look at, and then you need to figure out what is that spot of time highlighting. It's kind of like a key scene in a movie, or those instances where something speeds up in time or something slows down. And the AP readers are going to pick passages that explore diverse and unexpected moments of human time and human conditions. So when you guys did the poem, A Story, that was about parenting, but it was kind of unexpected and a little bit weird on how it was presented because of the zoom up of time and the fast forward and the flashback. But really, these human conditions are, it could be love, it could be marriage, friendship, parenthood. It could be like a girl growing up. There's a lot of easy human conditions that are depicted, but the thing is they're unexpected in how they're presented, and you just got to figure out that spot of time, and then that's what you should pick apart. That's your step 3 or phase 3 of close reading. The second thing you need to realize, how does the speaker and character feel at the beginning of the close read to the end of the close read? So think about a Toy Story. At the beginning of the close read, if you will, of the movie, these two do not like each other. But at the end, they become best friends. Now, this is very cliche, very simplistic evolution of character relationships. Characters are going to evolve like this. They're going to either de-evolve, like the relationship breaks apart, and then in very, very rare cases, a character will stay the same. So here's a good example. If you've read 1984, Winston Smith kind of de-evolves, and he actually kind of becomes the same guy by the end of the piece. He's still following Big Brother at the start of the book to the end of the book, if that makes sense. That's a very bad example, to be honest. But if a character doesn't change at all, you have to ask yourself why. Like a Seth, he doesn't change at all. And so that may not be the key character that you need to pick apart. But you need to ask yourself, do they evolve? Does the relationship or does the situation grow, or does it break down? And then obviously you do the analytical why. These are going to be your moments of complexity, and I think you're also going to see juxtaposition. They're not going to be very Toy Story-ish. They're not going to be like, oh, they loved each other, hated each other, or vice versa. So here's a really good sentence stem that you could use when you start writing these kind of analytical evolution or de-evolutions. So while the character feels blank about Torvald, there are also feelings of blank towards Torvald as well. So when we think about the two characters right now, Torvald and Nora, I don't think they're absolutely good or absolutely evil. I think there is this juxtaposition and level of complexity that you need to pick apart. And then finally, cutoff matters. This is definitely that prose thing you have to think about. So when you think about you're watching a favorite TV show, your favorite character is on the screen and they have a gun aimed at them, and then it goes to commercial break. They do that because it's suspenseful and it makes you stay on the show and watch till the next commercial gets through. Same thing with movies when it cuts to a certain scene or when it like cuts out completely. Even with chapters of a novel, the cutoff matters. It's a cliffhanger effect. So a close reading passage, whoopsies, has to stop somewhere. Where does it cut off and why? This is the big picture, and this is where the AP readers are trying to kind of give you hints or a moment to think about that big theme discussion. So here's an example. So you guys actually did this poem called A Story. This is from, I can't remember which exam, it'll tell me on the front. Okay, this was from 2011. So we've already done A Story. And then the second passage, just so you can kind of see, like they did a contemporary passage or a contemporary poem for their first close read. And then for question 2, they are doing an old school close read, and they do this a lot. They tend to use more modern poetry, at least in my past couple experiences at the AP Read and looking through my research on the website's resources. They tend to do, the prose tends to be the older piece of literature. But I bet this year it's going to be flipped. Just because in the past it's trend contemporary poem and then old school prose. So this, first off, make sure you use the information given to you at the beginning, because there is some very telling background information that they reveal to you. The poem is called Middlemarch. Remember, title analysis, really good way to conclude your writing. It is written by George Eliot, but not really. It's actually written by a woman. Ask yourself, why would a woman write a book called Middlemarch about a married couple in the 1880s, but not publish it as a female? That already tells you some of the human condition that she's going to look into, which is gender role and marriage. But there is way more complexity. These two characters, Rosie and Ligate, they don't absolutely love each other and they don't absolutely hate each other. I think there are moments of tenderness between the two, and I also think there's moments of aggression between the two. That goes back to how did the characters evolve or de-evolve, and it also goes back to that juxtaposition and complexity that I just discussed. The next thing is, what human condition is it studying? This is about marriage. But I think we are so used to marriage being depicted as either, like rom-com, perfectly happy-go-lucky marriages on TV or in movies, that this is the stuff that most people don't talk about, which is marriage is hard, especially when it comes to finances. And that's kind of a hard thing for maybe some of you guys to connect to. It's easy for me to connect to because I'm married and I have a little bit more world experience, but you guys got to kind of start pushing yourself into that human condition that's beyond just being a teenager, because they pick passages that deal with a lot of those complex issues. So this one, the cutoff matters. The cutoff is also really hard on this one because it's on a second page, so a lot of kids forget. Most of the time they're going to make sure that your piece is on one page, but if not, the cutoff is, are we to go with spoons and forks then? Rosamund with her lips getting thinner and the thinness of her utterance. And so she's ticked. She's definitely angry. And then it says, she was determined to make no further resistance or suggestions. So it's pretty clear that the marriage looks like it's de-evolving, just the way that it closes out right here. But I do think that closing is important. So finally, what I'd like you to do is make sure you go back to that piece, that prose piece, look at what human condition or conditions, what spot of time are they trying to capture, and why are they highlighting it for you? How does the speaker or character or persona feel at the beginning of the piece versus the end? And it's not going to be a simple Toy Story solution. It's probably going to be more complex, and there's going to be a couple different layers of that relationship or that situation. And then finally, that cutoff matters. And that could be a really good opportunity for you to talk about the conclusion or to go revisit the title. So hopefully that helps you guys. I also would recommend that you apply these strategies in general to all pieces of literature, not just the AP essay. So good job, good luck, and keep studying. And my final recommendation is Google the old AP Lit exam prompts for the essay, because you can see a lot of the prose and poetry already.